Welcome back to Learn SKN, and today we have a different video for you. Just a video to help us to recognize World Food Day 2022. So on October 16th every year, the FAO has deemed that day World Food Day, and so we use that time, that day, the 16th of October, to shine the light on some of the problems that persons are facing around the world as it relates to food security. So there are so many persons in the world who are still going hungry today, and so many persons, even some countries in the Caribbean, who are still food insecure, because a lot of us in the Caribbean, we have to import like over 90% of our food. And so World Food Day is all about recognizing that we are in a world where hunger is still a thing, and we are trying to do what we can. We should try to do what we can to try and prevent hunger and starvation around the world. And so this year's theme is simple enough: leave no one behind. And so this theme have been chosen because of so many things that have been going on in the previous years. You have a war in Europe, you have increasing prices in food, you have indigenous persons being taken from their lands, you have children being left behind. So this theme encompasses everybody. No one left behind. No one should be hungry. No one should be starved of food. No one should really still be experiencing food security. And so that theme was chosen to try to reflect exactly what's the status of the world today as it relates to fighting hunger. So leave no one behind. 2022 finds us with an ongoing pandemic, conflict, a climate that won't stop warming, rising prices, and international tensions. This is affecting global food security. We need to build a sustainable world where everyone, everywhere, has regular access to enough nutritious food. And so we know that the pandemic is not totally over. And even though we are seeing the back end of it, the results have been catastrophic for so many persons around the world. Because I realize because of the pandemic, some persons lost access to food. Imagine you can't get to import the food that you need. You can't get to go out and do your planting, your farming. Your persons stop exporting their products because countries held on to their own products for themselves. And so the pandemic affected millions of persons worldwide. And so we look at some stats later on. The conflict in Ukraine with Russia and Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine combined to provide almost a third of the world's grains that we can use for cereal and flour and those kind of things. So food again is being affected. Not to mention climate change. We in the Caribbean, we have a small footprint as it relates to carbon emissions, but yet we are feeling the effects of climate change. Stronger hurricanes, drought, wet seasons going longer, dry seasons going longer, and that affects our food systems. And so we have to be cognizant of all of those things as we reflect on World Food Day 2022. We all know that international prices are rising, and we in the Caribbean, we import inflation, right? So if the price is expensive in America, it's going to be expensive for us because we import inflation. We know with the oil system, the OPEC countries are reducing their output and thus carrying up the price of oil. And so now, at the pumps, it costs a lot of money to fill your vehicles, and so that would impact your food system, what you choose to buy, because you have to now ration and reallocate your resources. So these are things that are affecting the food systems globally and causing persons to be left behind, causing a lot of hunger. So I'll play a short clip, a PA, that FAO has on their website that you can always check out to show you just what's going on as it relates to food security in the world. So just look at this clip and we'll get back to some of the other stats.
8 billion people, one agri-food system. Conflict, climate change, slowdowns and downturns. Inequality, rising food prices. And denying progress to many, limiting progress for us all. What affects one impacts many. Sustainability starts with equal opportunity. Equal opportunity for farmers, producers, and consumers and care for the environment. Let's build a world with more and good quality food that is safe, nutritious, and affordable for all. Leave no one behind.
So that's basically a public service announcement from FAO to just make us aware of the situation right now as it relates to food security globally and how many persons are missing out. And so we have some stats right down here. They say every day more than 30,000 people are forced to flee their homes because of conflict and persecution. So maybe many of us in the Caribbean don't experience this, but we just need to keep those persons in mind. Imagine you have to flee your home. And what happened to your food? Imagine you plant your food, you have to flee, so all your farms are left there, all the animals are unattended, and so where are you going to get your food from? Because of conflict in Africa, in Asia, in those areas where a lot of conflict is happening, and that is affecting the food systems around those parts and causing persons to become hungry. Let's say right here, climate change affects the rural poor, their agricultural yields and productivity, contributing to increasing pests and diseases and changing the nutrient composition of major staple crops. And so, as I said before, climate change is affecting all of us. In the Caribbean, we are affected. Sometimes your fresh water becomes salt water because of the intrusion as the tide rises and sea rises and things like that. Sometimes you have your plants, your animals, and because of the extended period of either the dry season or the wet season, certain pests and diseases that were not prevalent becomes more prevalent, and so that affect our crops, especially in the wet season when you have increased weather, increased water, increased moisture. So more fungus affecting our crops, more viruses affecting our crops, and so that's going to affect our overall food systems. And so we have to be aware of that and try our best to see what we can do. 2/3 of those experiencing high acute food insecurity are rural food producers. Again, that kind of more goes towards persons in Africa, in Asia, where the rural area is so different from the urban area, and poverty is really on the rise. Hunger is really on the rise in those rural areas. Acute food insecurity means that today you might have some food, tomorrow you just realize you don't have enough food, access to enough food. And so that's a thing that happens regularly in certain areas. Look at this stat right here. In 2021, some 193 million people experience high acute food insecurity, requiring humanitarian assistance for their survival, while over 500,000 face catastrophic conditions, meaning starvation and death. So you realize that it's rough out there for some persons as it relates to food. I know some of us might take it for granted because we throw away food, we have access to food, it's no big deal. But there are places, 193 million people, right, experience acute food insecurity. So at some point, they just do not have access to nutritious food, and that can be very difficult for them. And some catastrophe, we're talking about starvation and death because they do not have access to food. 1.3 billion people, almost 40% of the world's population, cannot afford a healthy diet because you realize a lot of the junk food are cheaper, right? And so some people, 3.1 billion, they just cannot afford a healthy diet. What does that lead to? Certain diseases, certain conditions mashing up your body. Even in OECS, we have a high obesity rate. In the Caribbean, high blood pressure is a thing. Diabetes is a thing, a real problem. And so that's all because we do not have access to affordable, healthy diet. And imagine 3.1 billion people. The world has about 8 billion persons. And so that's almost 40% just cannot afford a healthy diet because the food prices are on the rise. Production costs are going up, and so they pass it on to the consumer. Supply chain issues, so they pass it on to the consumer, and so prices are going up. You go into the supermarket, nice healthy fruits and vegetables, but the prices, you just can't afford those prices. Indigenous people are guardians of 80% of the world's terrestrial biodiversity and 20% of the Earth's surface, yet globally they suffer higher rates of poverty, malnutrition, and internal displacement compared to non-indigenous groups. And so we know we can empathize here. because we know that there are indigenous groups that were just misplaced by or displaced by, you know, European settlers and things like that. They came in, took over the spot, killed off a lot of people. Those who remain, they're still really facing a lot of hardships, right? So 160 million children worldwide are engaged in child labor. Thankfully, here in the region, this is not really a bigger deal, but in other places, some children are forced into working even before they can hold a social security card by our standards. And so we have to be cognizant of where our food is coming from, because sometimes our food is as a result, a product of child labor. We don't really want that as a thing. We don't want it on our conscience, right? Globally, women are 15% more likely than men to be moderately or severely food insecure. So equality right here, as it relates to food security, is a problem. 15% more likely than men, women, right? Imagine women can't always be able to go out and toil because they might have to look after sick children, their children, and so it can be difficult, right? Men have greater access to certain resources than women in other places in the world. Maybe not in the Caribbean per se, but in other places where gender equality is just not a thing, women have a harder time than men. And so what I want is for us to, on tomorrow, Sunday, is World Food Day, the 16th of October, just reflect on some of the things that we discussed today, and you can go on the website and get more information, and just be aware of how things are right now in the world. The job of the FAO is to try and fight global hunger, and so I know most of you would have seen FAO in school, you heard about them, you know what they're about, and so do your part to try to reduce world hunger, right? Do not really, not only to reduce world hunger, but also to help farmers and practitioners produce food in a sustainable way, right? So there are ways you can do your part. You know, you can eat local, stick to your local goods, insist that your supermarket buy local. You go into the supermarket, they have imported stuff. You just say, we don't want any imported stuff, we want local. Try your best to not waste food. If you have too much, give someone, or you can try to replenish the earth by pumping it back so you can produce at a higher quality. There are things you can do, right? Even start your own garden, start your own little farm, and have a little barter system with friends and family. Start your school gardens. Make sure that they feed into the school feeding program, so that persons who have homes that are not able to give food every day, breakfast, lunch, dinner every day, they can get a meal at the school if you are able to have a nice garden and feed into that system. So there are ways you can do, the things you can do to try to improve the system as it is today. All right, so that's it for now. I just wanted to, give you a little bit more information if you're not aware of World Food Day, so that you can draw some awareness to it, so that you are able to do your role and play your part. All right, don't wait until October 16th only. You can make this a shift in your way you approach life, right? Sustainable food, leave no one behind, better production, more efficient production, more sustainable production leads to better health for you and a better environment. All right, so that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.